next thing that we are going to discuss is about the subqueries. So how do you handle the subqueries and what is the need of subquery that we are going to discuss. Let's say if you have so far if you see the what is the need of subquery, let's first understand and then we'll go over it. So the first thing to understand about the subquery is that, let's say if I have given you a task wherein if you have to retrieve the data, retrieve all the data of employees whose salary is greater than some 11,000. So if I say that, you can easily write the query and then bring it. But let's say if I have the requirement saying that let's say retrieve me all the employees who are earning the salary more than able. So definitely you don't know what is the salary of able. If you know the salary of able, then you can easily write a query and then you can easily write a query and then get the salary. But you don't know that guy able's salary. So this can be achieved by using a subqueries. So you can use a subquery and then achieve that. So how do you rate how do you write a query? So let's say what I was trying was, let's say if you write a query saying that select last name, comma salary, let's say job ID, from job ID, from let's say employees where salary is greater than, let's say 11,000. Salary is greater than 11,000. So if this is a query, then you can easily write it. But let's say among all the employees in the employee table, if I have given you a query saying that retrieve me all the employees whose salary is greater than able salary, you don't know able is you don't know the salary of able. Able is an employee of your organization. Let's say how do you derive it in that case? So how do you derive the salary of an able? So that this can be achieved by using a subquery here. So how do you write a subquery? What do you call as a main query and what do you call as a subquery? So let's try to write it. Now I need to retrieve all the employees who are earning the salary more than able. Let's say this part is same, till this part I'm going to write it as the same, but I don't know this guy salary of an able. So let's say where salary is greater than, let's say select salary from employees. So employees, so whose salary, the last name of an employee is able. So let me write the query where last name equal to able, where last name equal to able. So when you try to write this condition, so when I try to execute this, so this basically gives you so this query, whatever you're writing here to retrieve the salary of an employee, this is called as a subquery, and the query which you have written here, that is called as a main query. So whenever you execute this complete query, so what happens is that first inner query will get executed and the result of this query will be replaced. This main query will be driven based on the output of this query. So what I'm trying to say is, whenever you execute this complete query, first this query will get executed. So what is the result of this query? Let's say employee salary is 11,000. So this entire query will be replaced by 11,000. Then your outer query will, how it will become? It will become like where salary is greater than 11,000. So which query will get executed here? This is called as an inner query. So inner query will get executed then the outer query, or you can call this query as a main query and this query as a subquery in using this. So inner query or a subquery. So we cannot call this as a nested query. So these are the two different things. So we cannot call this as a nested query. Nested query is like correlated query is, I think correlated query we can term it as a nested query, but it is not a nested query here. So this is how you can write a subquery and then get the data from it. So this is a simple subquery. Subqueries are basically divided into two types. So subqueries are divided into two types. So one is called as a single row subquery, and another is called as a multiple row subquery, which it is there. So when you talk about a single row subquery, if a subquery whatever you are returning returns only one row, if it returns only one row, then that is called as a single row subquery. If it returns more than one row, subquery what you are writing returns more than one row, then that is called as a multiple row subquery. Which it is there. Let's say when you use single row subquery and multiple row subquery, the operators that you use should be different. Let's say if it is a single row subquery, you have to use greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal to. All these comparison operators only you can use with a single row subquery. If it is a multiple row subquery, you should use in, any, all, or the three operators which you can use with a multiple row subquery operators, in using this. So let me try and write different examples in using a single row subquery and the multiple row subquery. So let's write different examples. So there are a few guidelines that you have to follow. Like basically whenever you write a single row subquery, that should be always on the right side of the comparison condition which you can use it. Right. So let's say we have something called as now I would like to write a query here. My requirement is that I would like to get the employees who are having the same job ID as 141 and who are earning the salary more than 143. So I hope you understand my question here. See, basically what I'm trying to do is I want to identify the employees who are earning the same salary, belongs to the same, who are having the same job ID as 141. Suppose let's say if 141 is a IT programmer, I would like to retrieve only the employees who are IT programmer and who are earning the salary more than 143. So now how do you write this condition? So let's try to write it. Let's say I would like to retrieve the employee's last name, comma, job ID, and you have a salary column from employees who are having the same job ID as 141. So where job ID is equal to, so how do you retrieve the job ID of 141? So again you need to write a subquery here. So how do you do that? Let's say select job ID from employees. Let's say your salary is where so 141 is an employee ID, so I'll write it as 141 of this. So this is one subquery which I have written. So what does it gives me? It will give me the job ID of 141. So what is a job ID of 141? It is nothing but a st underscore clerk, which it is there. And along with this, I'll also want to write where salary is greater than, so select salary from employees, where, let's say, employee ID. So this guy's salary should be greater than the actual end. So what we are trying to do here is we are retrieving the employees who are having the same job ID as 141 and who are earning the salary more than 143. So let's try to execute this. So when you try to do, it will give you the employees. So this type of a query is called as a non-pairwise comparison query. So basically, non-pairwise comparison means you are retrieving the data from two tables and you are comparing the data. So that is called as a non-pairwise comparison query. So this is another example for your subquery. So how we do it? Can we select the employee ID also in this subquery? No, because you are comparing only with one value and you should retrieve only one column from here. So what happens if I retrieve employee ID also from here? Definitely it will throw the error, right? So if you look at it, let's say job ID, comma, employee ID. So you are retrieving one column, but you are trying to compare with the two. So it will throw the error. So you cannot do that. Definitely it says that too many values, means it is a kind of an ambiguous statement whether it has to compare with this value or with this value. So this is an error in yes query. So you cannot write it. So you can pull only one column. This is an invalid query. So you cannot write it. So let's say this is one example about your subquery. In the main query, yes, you can write anything in the main query. Let's say if you would like to get in the main query, suppose if you want to change from here, yes, main query, you don't have any restriction. You can pull that. So always you can bring whatever the columns that you wanted in the main query. So that is one way of writing a single row subquery. And the another way of using is, like, you can also use the group functions in the subquery. So that's another example to talk about. Let's say if I given you a task to retrieve all the employees who are earning the salary more than the average salary of a company. So how many employees are earning the salary more than average salary of a company? So let's say if I use last name, comma, salary, comma, job ID, and last name, salary, job ID, and if you say, even if you want to get the department ID as well, so you can bring it. Now what I'm trying to write, I'm trying to retrieve all the employees who are earning the salary more than average salary of a company. So let's say from employees where, let's say, salary is greater than average salary of a company. So how do you retrieve the average salary of a company? Select average of salary from employees. So that will give you the average salary. So from employees, so try to retrieve this. So this will give you department spelling. So average salary of a company. So this will give you the complete details about the employees who are earning the average salary of a company. So first, this subquery gets executed. So if you see, this is the average salary, and it will give you all the employees who are earning the salary more than this amount. So in this example, what we are trying to understand is that you can also use the aggregate functions inside a query. And there is one more thing. See, whenever you're writing a query, this query should return only one row. What happens if your subquery returns more than one row? Then definitely this will result in an error. So now if I give you a task saying that group by department ID, so when you try to execute this, so this will give you error. What is error? Single row subquery returns more than one row. So what does that mean? Your subquery is returning more than one row. It cannot compare with which value it has to compare, right? So it cannot pick the only one value from it. If your subquery returns more than one row and you're using a single row subquery operator. So what are all the single row subquery operator? Less than, greater than, all these symbols. If you're using it, then it will throw the error. So we should always avoid such kind of a situations in the query. So what happens if your subquery doesn't return any records? So then your main query also doesn't return. So if your subquery, let's say I'm writing this condition, let's say I'm writing some dummy thing, let's say where 1 equal to 2. So is 1 equal to 2 is true at any time? It never be true. So what happens if I do this? It doesn't return me any rows. Oh, basically it is returning a null value. Okay, let's try to see this, how it works. Basically, if your subquery is not returning any result, main query also doesn't return any rows. So always you need to make sure your subquery returns the records, and so the main query also. So that is more on the single row subqueries what we write. So always make use of the single row subquery operators and then run it. So that is more on the single row subquery operators. So I would like to hear if you have any questions on this so far, please. So you can ping me. That would be helpful for me to quickly resolve your questions in case if you have any. All right. Yes. So we are not still talking about whether it is a primary key or not. Yes, employee ID is a primary key, but we are least bothered about it, whether it is a primary key or not. So that we'll discuss it later. So you can come to the straightly to your question. We can use order by. Yes, you can use order by. Let's say here this is returning me. No, this query is not working. So let's say this query, when you execute it, it is giving you the data. Let's say I want to order the data based on the last name. So I can use order by last name. So when I use it, now it will sort the data in the ascending order. So this is how the data will be sorted. You can always use the order by. You can even use it. It has not returned many employees with 141. Definitely if you execute this, it will give you only one. So there will be only one employee who is having an employee ID as 141. Definitely. So it doesn't retrieve you the records which is more than one. So we are talking about the job ID here. I'm comparing the job ID. I'm not equating the primary key. So if I'm equating the primary key, definitely it will give me only 141, but it is not there. So I never written 1 lakh here. I think I have written 11,000 in my last query also. All right. So let's move on with the next one. So when you're typing, make sure that you type the complete statement, complete query in a single statement, so that it will be easier for me to read out and then answer your question. Okay. All right. So let me move on with the multiple row subquery operators. So we have three multiple row subquery operators. One is called as a in, any, and then all. So in, any, and all. So how do you use this one? So with a simple example, we can easily understand this, how any and all operator works. So if you understand any and all, then in operator is the same thing. So my question is, like, I would like to retrieve all the employees who are earning the salary less than that of any of the IT employees. Any is different, all is different. Any means if it satisfied with any one of the value, it will return the data. So now I want to retrieve all the employees. So select last name, so job ID and salary. Select last name, job ID and salary. Let's say you want to retrieve even the employee ID also, that's fine. So let me retrieve it, employee ID from, let's say you have the employees table. So if you would like to retrieve all the employees who are earning the salary less than that of any of the IT programmers. So how do you write the query? Let's say salary is less than any of the IT programmers. So what is the IT programmer's salary? That you need to retrieve that in the subquery. So how do you do that? Let's say I want to retrieve the salary of an IT programmer. So when I write it, select salary from employees. So what is the job ID of an IT programmer? So it is IT underscore PROG. So where job ID is equal to IT underscore PROG. So let's try to execute this subquery first and see the result. Okay, so I'm executing only the subquery, not the main query. So when you execute it, it is giving multiple rows. Is it a single row subquery or a multiple row subquery? It's a multiple row subquery. So because it is returning the multiple values, so it is a multiple row subquery. What are the values it is retrieving? So if you see, you have 9,000 and you have 6,000 and you have 4,800 and you have 4,200. So what is your query says? Here you're trying to retrieve all the employees whose salary is less than that of any of these values. If it is less than 9,000, it will return. If it is less than 6,000, it will return. If it is less than 4,200, it will return. So any of the values, it will return it. So now when it is retrieving me the complete result, that should not be an IT programmer. I'm actually looking for an employees who are not an IT programmers and earning the salary less than that of IT programmers. So basically, when you try to write here and job ID is not equal to IT programmers. Job ID is not equal to IT programmers. So when you try and execute this, will give you all the employees who are earning the salary less than that of any of the IT employee. See, observe the salary column here. Let me sort the data in the descending order. Why this record is being retrieved? 8,800? Because it is less than 9,000. Why 8,300 is being retrieved? Because it is less than this. And similarly, if you go on check, why 3,100 is being retrieved? If it is less than 4,200 and it is less than all of these values, all of these values. So when you are checking any operator, if it is satisfied with any one value, it has, you need not to satisfy all of the values. If it satisfies any one value, that is fine. So let's go back to this example. Is 8,800 is less than 6,000? True or false? False. Definitely this is. So is 8800 is less than 4800? False. So is 8800 is less than 4200? False. But why this record has been retrieved? Because it has satisfied with one value. Any means any one value it can satisfy. So I'll try to write the same query and observe the result. See here, we have total how many rows? 76 rows. And if you see, there are records whose data is even less than this. So I'll try to use this same query with all operators and check. So when I use all means it should satisfy every value returned by the query. Means it must be less than 9000, it must be less than 6000, it must be less than 4800, and it must be less than 4200. So try to see the data and now retrieve, or this is the maximum salary that you have. Why 8800 is not been retrieved? Why 8800 and the values above 6000 also is not been retrieved? Because when you say 6000, let's say 6000 might be when you compare 6000 with 4800, 6000 is a greater value. See, what I'm trying to say here is any means if it is satisfies with any one value returned by the query, then the result will be retrieved. But in case of a all operator, it has to satisfy every value, all the conditions. So when you say 4000, compare this data, 4000 is less than this, it's less than this, it is less than this, and it is less than this. But if you see like an earlier value, you have 8800, right? 8800 is less than this value, true or false? 8800 is less than 4200. It's a false condition. 8800 is less than 4800. It's a false. So definitely so when you say any operator will satisfy any one of the value returned by the query. All operator should satisfy all of the values returned by the query. So that is a difference between the any operator and the all operator. See, any means compares to value, each value returned by the subquery, and it will compare to every value returned by the query. So there is a difference, each value, every value. Every means all the conditions, all the value conditions should be satisfied. Each means anyone. So that is more on the multiple subquery part. And you also have an in operator. In operator is pretty simple. We have seen that in operator in the previous examples. So when you go here, let's say if I want to retrieve all the employees, so it's a kind of, yes, you can call any means or condition and all means and condition. So you can consider in that way, yes, it should satisfy all the values. In that sense, yes. So I want to retrieve all the employees who are actually sitting in the location 1800. So if you go to the tables, there is a table called as a locations table. So when you try to do this, so under a location you have no, let's go to departments. Okay, so when you go to department, there is something called as a location ID. I want to retrieve all the employees who are sitting in a location 1700. So how do you write the query using a subquery? Basically you have to use a subquery and then derive it. So how do you compare the multiple values? That is nothing but a in operator. So department ID in. So now let me retrieve all the departments which are sitting in the location 1700 from departments where location ID is equal to 1700. So when you try to execute this query, so now you are retrieving the multiple employees. So when you try to execute the complete query here, so this will give me the employees who are actually sitting in the location 1700. So this is how you can also use an in operator with subqueries. We have just seen previously as 10, 20, 30, something like that. So in operator will compare the list of values to be used. So it is same as a join. Yes, you can consider it as an inner join because it is matching the data based on all the conditions and then retrieving. So it is more or less like an inner join when every value is present in both the tables. If suppose let's say when you see 1700, yes, it's an inner join. You can call it as an inner 120, 130, 140, 160. Yeah, it's like an inner join which you can call. So that is more about the subqueries. How do you use the subqueries in SQL? So basically in subqueries, what have you learned here so far is that you have seen what is a single row subquery is all about and what is a multiple row subquery. We have seen the two types of operators. One is called as a single row subquery operator and another is called as a multiple row subquery operators. So there are other type of advanced level queries, so which we call it as an inline query or an inline view. So there are a lot of things, lot of advanced level subqueries. So inline view is something that which is important. So what do you mean by inline view? In a from clause, yes, you can write a subqueries using even joins. Let's say if I have to, inside a subquery also you can use a join, and out in the main query also you can use a join. So that can be done. Yes. So now one thing is that about the inline view. So if you are writing a query in the from clause, if you are using a query in from clause without the table name, that is called as an inline view. So suppose now we need to understand about some pseudo columns here. There is something called as a row num. See, this row num is like a sequence value which is generated at the runtime based on the number of rows. Sequence value generated at runtime, based on the number of rows returned by the query. So let's say if I write a query something like this, select row num, comma, let's say employee ID, LOYEE, employee ID, and you have a last name, let's say salary, from employees. Let's say if I write a condition as where department ID is equal to, let's say 50, it will generate the number based on the number of rows returned by it. So when you try to see, it will generate the number as 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you have a column in the employees table which is storing the value as row number? No. If you go and check the employees table, do you have any column here called as a row number? No. But it's called as a pseudo column which is being generated. So it's based on the number of rows. So if I use where department ID is equal to 90, I'll just vary from 1 to 3 because you have only 3 rows returned by the query. And there is another one called as a row ID. Row ID. So row ID is nothing but the physical address given for each row stored in Oracle. Physical address given for each row. This value will be unique for each record stored in the database. So let's say if I write row ID is an alphanumeric one. So it consists of alphabets as well as a numerics. So try to use. So this is like an alphanumeric value. I think it is not using numeric. It's an alphabet. You can call alphabets. So this is row ID is a unique physical address. You can call it as a unique physical address given for each row. So this is an internal to Oracle. Like whenever your database is reading the data, it will use this address in the memory and it will read the data from it. So that is your row ID. So whenever you are using, let's say, whenever you are comparing the row number, you can always write the query, something like this. Let's say if I have row ID is equal to 50 and I can write the condition as and row number is less than, let's say, some 10 records. So when you try and execute, so it will give me only the 9 numbers, right? So this can be used. Suppose if I have given you a query saying that I would like to retrieve the employees where the row number is between 10 and 20. So now department ID is equal to this. So can I write it something like this where row number is between 10 and 20. Since it is a dynamically generated number, it cannot apply the filter something like this if you try to use. It doesn't give you any records. Even though the query is returning more than 20 rows, it doesn't give you the number of records between that. So why is that? So whenever you're using a row number, you can always apply a less than operator directly, but you cannot apply a filter greater than symbol and then the between and an operator, which does not work. So how can I achieve this? Suppose, let's say, if you have a requirement saying that I want to retrieve the employees who are earning the salary between 10 and 20. So I want to achieve this. So is there a way that we can achieve? Yes, by using a inline query. So how do you use an inline query here? Inline query is nothing but, let's say, complete this statement, you take it. So select from, inside a from clause generally we write a table name, right? So instead of a table name, I'm writing a query itself. I'm using a query. Let's not take the row ID anymore. And this row number, I'll alias it as a rnum. So when you use a select star, what will happen? This complete data, whatever you have written here, it will take into some temporary result. And it will call that as an inline view. So it's basically a temporary view where you are storing the data. So when you try to execute this, so this will give you the value as row number value is being written now. So if you are using a query inside a from clause, that is called as an inline view. So when you try to write where rnum is between 10 and 20, now it will work. Why I am using rnum? Because this is the alias that I have provided here, right? So that's why I'm using a row number here to achieve that. So try to execute this query. So this will give you now this one. So I'm showing you two examples here. So how to retrieve the data between the by using a row number column, and another is by using the another is that you have to understand here is about the inline view. This is called as an inline view. If you are writing a query in place of a table name, that is called as an inline view. All right. So,
okay. Karthik, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Consider you have a rows of records in a table, and you want to update only one row, some value for a column. Consider you are not maintaining any ID column, then based on row ID, it is better you can use it to update, right? I mean, that is the only best way to do it, right?
Yeah,
because it has it stores surface characters. Okay.
You can use it when you want to update if you don't have any other unique column to determine a row. Then if you know which row is that, first you can determine retrieve the row ID of that address or row ID of that row and then update it. So row ID is always unique. Even though the data is duplicate in the table level, your row ID will always be unique.
Okay, so this row num is something like if you have a select query, if it contains 20 rows, so if you say put the row num as the first column, it will just automatically put like 1 to 20. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's
I mean, it is not any, it is not unique like row ID. Okay, got it.
No,
that's
no. What I mean to say, row ID is dynamically generated. It is not stored in your database. So when you say row num is dynamically, whenever you retrieve the query, based on the number of rows returned by your query, your row number will be generated.
Okay, got it. Yeah. That's what I had the row.
It is. So even though my employees table is having 108 rows, when I'm executing the query, it is generating the values from 1 to 45 only. Why? Because your query is returning only 45 records. So it is not something which is stored in the database. It is dynamically generated when you are running a query. That's it.
Yeah. I remember one time I used row ID. I never used row num, but I had this question. Thank you so much for clarifying. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say this is called as an inline view query. So the way how you use a query instead of a table name, that is called as a inline view. So often you'll also use another type of a query that is called as a correlated subquery. So these are all the advanced related things. So correlated subquery, correlated query. So if your main query and inner query both are related through a join, then that is called as a correlated subquery. So let's try to bring, let's say I want to bring the third highest salaried employee. So how do you get that? Or the fourth highest salaried employee. I want to retrieve all the employees who are having a salary. So how do you use the condition? So select last name, comma salary, job ID from employees where I want to get the third highest salary from this. So where 3 equal to this, I'm going to alias it as M. This is because this is called as a main query, and I'm going to write a subquery here. So select count of salary from, let's probably look for the fourth highest salary of an employee. So select count of salary from, so this is also going to be an employees table because you have a salary column even in this. So this is called as an inner query, where what is the condition that you're going to write? So where m dot salary is less than I dot or greater than, I think it's greater than. So where m dot salary is greater than I dot salary. So you'd like to fetch the fourth highest salary. So let's try to look here before we proceed. Let's take a look at what is the fourth highest salary here. I'm sorting the data now. The fourth highest salary that you have is a 13,500. So let's take a look at it, how, whether it will retrieve the records or not. Why it is called as a correlated, I think this is, fourth highest salary is this. So if you look at it, so it's basically there is a join between your outer query and the inner query. So what type of join it is? Is it a equi-join or non-equi-join? So it's a non-equi-join. So you have created a join between your main query and the inner query, and I'm retrieving the fourth highest salary of an employee. So often in the interviews you'll come across these type of questions, how to retrieve the fourth highest salary of an employee. So this is called as a correlated subquery. So if you see the earlier examples here, how many times this subquery will get executed? How many times this subquery will get executed? Only once. Before your main query gets executed, your subquery will get executed only once. But if you come here, your subquery will get executed for every row returned by your main query. So every row returned by the main query. So this type of a query is called as a correlated subquery, because based on the result of outer query, your inner query is getting executed. So this is called as a correlated subquery. If you are using a subquery inside a select list, that is called as a scalar subquery. If you are now, you can also use the subquery here. So basically, if you want to write the query, let's say this is your subquery. I think if you are what example we can quote it here, which gives you the unique employee. So if you're writing a subquery inside a select list, that is called as a scalar subquery. So advanced level queries are your correlated subquery and an inline view. Inline view is very, very important. So when you go for it, you have to understand how the from clause query can be used. So if you want to retrieve the fifth highest salary, just replace 4 by 5. That will give you the fifth highest salary from this. So fifth highest salary is 13,000. So you can go and check here. Fifth highest salary is 13,000. So similarly, whatever the salary that you would like to retrieve, so here you can write the number and it will give you. So this is one way of bringing up the top to bottom analysis. Or you can also use the analytical functions like a rank, dense rank and all. So we will see that rank functions in the last chapter of your SQL. So this is more on the correlated subquery, how you use a correlated subquery in using this. All right. So any questions in this so far? That completes your subquery part. So I would like to hear if you have any questions on this so far.
So Karthik, is it possible to do it in a reverse way, like last but one, something like that?
Last but one in this type of using single row subqueries, no, you cannot do it because you don't know how many number of salaries are present in that. So that way you cannot determine. But if you want to find out that by using a rank functions, yes, you can do that.
Okay, got it. So you can use that partition by density rank.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
got it. Yeah.
You can use a rank function and find out. But here, if you have to find out basically the yes, here also you can determine, but I think where salary is this, I don't know, maybe there is other way to determine. By using a row number you can get it, but that is not more appropriate. But it's better to bring it up using analytical functions and get it. So this is more on the subquery part. So that completes your sixth chapter, how you use the subqueries. All right. Row number is not stored in the database. Row ID is stored in the database. Row number is a dynamic one. Row ID is something which is stored in the database. All right. So the next one which we are going to talk about is the set operators. So it's a pretty simple chapter. You hardly 10 minutes you need to spend here. Then we'll go for your questions if you have any from the previous chapters. So what are all the different set operators that we have? So we have 4 set operators. One is a union, union all, minus, and then the union all minus query, and you also have intersect. So these are all the 4 set operators that we have. Out of all these, so let's first understand all the set operators eliminates the duplicates when you are retrieving the data, eliminates the duplicates. All the set operators eliminates the duplicates except the union all operator. So union all operator, and by default the data also will be sorted in all the set operators except union all. By default data also be sorted. By default the data will be sorted except union all again. So let's try to see how the set operators works. So I'll take a simple example and then we'll do it. So in this example basically you're using an employees table and the job history table. So if you look at the employees table, we know the structure, basically the job ID, manager ID, department ID, everything. So when you look at the jobs table, job history table, it is also have employee ID, job ID and the department ID. So let's take example here. So you have an employee ID. Let's say job ID is, you have even the job ID, and what is the other column that you have is a department ID. So assume that this is your employees table data. So you have employee ID as 100 and the job ID is, let's say, AD underscore PRES, and the department ID is 90. So 101 AD underscore VP, let's say you have a data as 90. 103, let's say IT programmer and department is 60. 104, again an IT programmer, so department is 100, something like department 100. You have the data something like this. And in the job history table you have an employee ID as 100 and this has AD underscore president and the department ID is 90. And 101, instead of ADVP, while inserting a data, they have inserted something as AD underscore V. It doesn't have P there. And then you have a 90. Let's say 103 and you have a IT programmer and the department number is 60. Okay, so this is a data. This is your employee table and this is your job history table. So let's first take a look at the union all operator. So how the union all operator can be used. So when you look at the union all operator, so when you try to use, if you try to combine the data by using both of them, so union all does not eliminate the duplicate records. So when you try to see, so you have 100 which is being repeated here, so which you call it as 100 AD underscore president, and you have 90, 100 AD underscore president, and you have the value as 90, and 101, let's say AD underscore VP, and let's say you have 90, and again 101 AD underscore V, let's say you have the department number as 90. So, and when you try to use this 103 and 104, let's say 103, see, the data will not be sorted generally by default, but I am just representing the data in the sorted format so that it will be easier for us to understand. Okay, so 103, and then you have an IT programmer, and you have a 60 here, and 104, let's say IT programmer. Do we have a duplicates in this data set? So what do you call as a duplicate here? This is a duplicate record. So this is called as a row level duplicate. If you see 100 AD underscore president and 100 underscore AD underscore president, this is a duplicate record. And this is also a duplicate record. Is this a duplicate record? No, because you have AD underscore VP here and you have AD underscore V. So this is not a duplicate record when you call it. So, but this is a duplicate record and this is also a duplicate record. So when you say union all is something that which does not eliminates the duplicate records, which does not eliminates the duplicate records and retrieves you the data. So very important thing that you have to know is does not eliminate the duplicate records. Does not eliminate the duplicate records in using this. So this is one thing that we have to know about the union. So when you say union all, so when you say the union operator, so union operator does eliminate the duplicate records. So what will be the output? And it will also sort the data. So this record will be deleted and this record will be deleted and this will be the output of your union. So do we have duplicates in this? No. Is this a duplicate? No, this cannot be considered as a duplicate, and this is also not a duplicate record when you use it. Union eliminates the duplicate records while using it. So when you say intersect, so what is the common elements in this? Is 100 is a common element? Yes. And 103 is also a common element. So when you say how do you get the data when you use intersect? So this is one record and this is another record which you get, which is common. So this also eliminates the duplicate records by default. Okay. So suppose if the same 103 is being repeated multiple times in this, definitely that eliminates the duplicate records and it will return you the data in using it. So basically that is another operator which it is there. Yeah, minus query is important for your Informatica Power Center unit testing. Okay. So when you say minus query will retrieve you, it will retrieve you the records, it will retrieve you the records which are present in set A present in set A but not in set B, which are present in set A but not in set B, but not in set B. So it'll try to give you the records which are present in set A but not in set B. What is set A here? This is set A and this is set B. So is this a record which is present in set B? Yes. So this record will not be retrieved. So will this be record will be retrieved? 101 AD underscore VP 90, 101 AD underscore V90. Is both the records are same? This one and this one. No, it is not a matching record. We cannot call this as a matching because AD underscore VP and AD underscore V. The record is not matching, right? So this record will be retrieved. And do you have a matching record for this? Yes. But do you have a matching record for this? So when it is comparing, it will compare at the row level. Okay. So when you run a minus query, basically it will give you this record 101 AD underscore VP, and it will also give you the another record that is your 104, because 104 doesn't have in your set B, it doesn't have. So it will give you the records which are present in set A but not in set B when you are using it. So this is more on the minus query part, how it works. How it works is basically how the minus query will return the data and all. So this is how it will give you the data. So that is completely about the intersection, minus, and then this. So when you are writing a union operators, you need to follow certain guidelines. So the number of columns and the data type should be same in both the queries whichever you are combining, So let me just try to show you how the set operator queries will be written. So when I go to the next example, so this is more on the set operators. Union all does not eliminate, intersect does eliminates a duplicate records, and minus does not eliminates. So exception minus, I don't know what do you mean by exception here. Exception minus, I don't know what do you mean by exception minus. So let me just try to write the query. So let's say if I have to compare the employee ID, so let's try to first take a look at the job ID from employees, union all. Let's say select job ID from job history. So does this eliminate the duplicate records or it does not eliminate the duplicate records? So when you try to execute, so see here, is this a duplicate record? Yes. Is this a duplicate record? Yes. Is this a duplicate record? Yes. So it does not eliminate the duplicates. So let me use the same thing with union. So I'm using only one column here to show you the difference between the union and the union all. Basically you can write n number of columns. Do you have duplicates here? Let me sort the data and check. You will not find any duplicates here because union eliminates a duplicate records. You can also use it with the multiple columns. So basically when you try to use this, select job ID, comma, let's say you want to use even the department ID, and here also you want to use a department ID. So try to execute this, and when you run the query, so this will give you, is this a duplicate record? No. Is this a duplicate record? No, because department ID is different in using this. So this is more about the this is more on the union operator. Next, let's move on with the intersect and the minus. So when you use a intersection operator, so it will give you the common elements between both of them. So this is a common records which are present, and when you use a, it also eliminates a duplicate record. When you use a minus, it will give you the records present in the employees table but not present in the job history table. So this is how it will execute the query and then run it. So this is more about the set operators. So only the thing is that the number of columns in the query 1 and query 2 should be same, and the data type of each column, I mean data type of this and this column should be same, and the data type of this and this column should also be the same way it has to use it. So that is more about the set operators. So if you understand the concept, there is nothing that you can, I mean there is nothing in the set operators basically. So basically you need to understand how the data will be combined and then used it with that, right? So any questions on this so far?
Karthik, I have a question but not related to set operators. Can I ask at the last of the class, or can you go ahead?
Yeah, maybe at the end you can go for.
Okay.
All right. So we have already completed the 7 chapters. I mean 7 chapters are being completed. So next is that we are going to understand about how to create the tables and what are the different types of constraints that we have, and also what are the different types of constraints that we have, and what are the different ways of creating a table, and how do you add the data to the tables and all that we will discuss. So maybe if you have any other questions related to the previous chapters, we have 10 more minutes of time. So I would like to answer all of them before we go for a next chapter, in case if you have any questions from your previous chapters. So probably I'll stop it for today. More about the understanding of the new concepts, I'll stop it for today, and tomorrow, and mostly tomorrow we'll try to wind up. In case if you are left with anything, we will start with the first chapter. We'll start maybe day after tomorrow. We'll start with the PLSQL. Right.
Karthik, Banu.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, means I missed a couple of classes. Can you please let me know? Is there anything which I missed important or like that?
It was all about the SQL, and I think
Okay.
since you guys were comfortable with SQL, I sent a mail. Otherwise, you would have attended that. It's only the SQL that we have discussed.
So yesterday also class happened?
No. Yesterday there was no class.
Okay. Then that should be fine.
Yeah. Is that okay? Display the job and the salary for that job based on the department number and the total salary of that for that job for the departments 20, 50, 80 and 90, for giving the each column heading has an appropriate heading. You need to use a case statement for this. Basically when you try to do it, you have to write something like this. So select, let's say, job ID, and you need to bring up the a value for a department number 20. So you need to use a sum function, sum of case when, let's say for department 20 you want to calculate, where department ID is equal to 20, then you are going to replace that by the salary column, else you are going to use 0 and then end. So this is going to be the department number 20 salary. So department underscore, let's say department number 20, and similarly you have to write for, let's say, I'll use it for till department number 50. So if you use this for department number 50, and this is also for 50, and similarly for 80 and 90, so this 80 here, and then as well as a 80 here, and here you have a department number 90, and you also need to bring up the total salary for that job ID. So it's nothing but the sum of the salary. So sum of the salary, I think it is, instead of a 0 there, you have to use null, because they're displaying the null value. We should not use a 0. So null, null. So sum of the salary from, where did it go? From employees, group by job ID. So when you try to execute this, this will give you that data, whatever we are talking about. So let's say for IT programmer, I don't have IT programmer, this total salary for giving each column, display the job salary of a job based on the department number. Total salary for that job. Yes, I think there is wrong in the statement. It is 28,800. So this is how you can use that. This document is already been sent to everyone. If you open it, you'll be able to see that. So this is a query that you have to write to get the data.
Okay, thank you, Karthik.
Yes. Okay, thank you then. So I'm winding up for the day.